Story 1. Between 2012 and 2015, I worked as a building supervisor overseeing 7 buildings. I also had a side job as a contractor to paint apartments as needed. This was only part-time due to my other building duties. If I didn't have time for painting, my employer would hire outside workers. By this point, I had been a painter for about 8 years and took pride in doing a very good job. I wanted everything perfect. At the time, my son was only 2 years old, and I had him with me for 2 weeks. Other building supervisors were taking care of my buildings during my time off. My boy started talking quite early, and by age 2, he could speak clearly. Although he didn't make much sense, you could understand every word he said. I received a call from one of my tenants angrily telling me that I must come to her place to paint her living room. Her grandchildren had colored all over the walls with permanent markers, and she had company coming. She said she would be totally embarrassed if they saw her walls. I kindly told her I was on my 2-week vacation and couldn't help. She began shouting into the phone, telling me it was my job, and that I had to do this, or she wouldn't pay rent next month. I told her to call the building owners and explain that to them, adding that they had 3 other painters on call. That went over very poorly. Then I told her that my painting and landlord status were 2 separate jobs and that I was on a 2-week vacation from both. She hung up and called the building owner. The owner called me afterward, asking for my side of the story. I explained, and she just laughed about it, saying, "If she calls back, just have fun." But she knows better than to threaten holding the rent back because I warned her if she didn't pay, she couldn't stay. I miss that woman. Less than 5 minutes later, I received the call I was expecting from the agitated tenant. She tried telling me the owners said I had to be there by tonight to get it done immediately. I laughed and told her I had already talked to Tina, not her real name, and that I was still on vacation. That's when she said she meant my boss from painting. Oops. Hee hee. Malicious compliance activated. I said he was right here beside me. I told her I'd put her on speaker so we could all straighten this out together. So I put the phone on speaker and told my son that he was wanted on the phone. He loved talking on the phone. He didn't listen to you, just told you all about what was going on with his day, what he was watching on TV, and about the puppy relieving itself in the grass. She couldn't be rude to a toddler, so after a few minutes of him chattering away, I picked up the phone and took it off speaker. This set my little man into a meltdown. I said into the phone, "That's my boss. By the sounds of him right now, it doesn't look like I can make it tonight." She just hung up. I didn't get another call from her. I had to call my mom to settle him down again. My mother loves all the children and would sit on the phone with any of her 10 grandchildren for hours, enjoying every second. Story 2. I work for a company that assists with refits, resets, range reviews, and setting up new stores in the United Kingdom. One of the chains we're contracted to is a major do-it-yourself retailer. For the most part, we don't receive all of the extra training that the chain's own staff do, and we're generally there to provide an extra set of hands or two. This is fine by me. One of the bits of training that we don't receive, because it would have to be done in every individual store we visit, is the vehicle movement training, which would allow us to be in the stockyard or warehouse while forklifts are in use. If a vehicle is active in the warehouse or the yard, the operator must ensure that a barrier or warning chain has been pulled across the respective door. In one store, I was told to take a cage full of cardboard waste out into the yard and bring back a cage full of stock from the same place. I made the trek across the store to the warehouse. The inner chain was down, and I could see that the outer chain was also down. There was only one person in the warehouse. Forklift operator, I'm about to start yard movement. Me, perfect timing. This cage will need stacking, I think. Forklift operator, you can't go into the yard. I'm going out there. Me, I'll be as quick as possible. Drop this at the waste area and grab the stock cage on my way back in. Forklift operator, I'm going out there now. You'll have to wait. I was sent off with the expectation that the rest of the team would finish the cage we'd been working on in the time it took me to finish my errand. There was no backup plan if I returned without the cage that was in the yard, the last one of the review. It was the only one left before we could all go home for the week. But I wasn't, and I'm still not vehicle movement trained. My name wasn't signed on the board next to the door as one of those permitted to mix it in the yard with the forklift. Therefore, I had to stand as the chain was hooked across the doorway and the forklift engine coughed to life. The door came down once the forklift was out of sensor range, so I could only assume that the driver was working hard. Half an hour later, when the team leader came looking to see why a simple stock cage retrieval was taking so long, he found me still waiting. I was leaning on my manual pump truck, the fork still under the cardboard cage I'd been meant to leave in the yard, waiting for the forklift operator to come back inside and remove the chain from the door. He was vehicle movement trained, so he opened the door to see the forklift parked near the garden center entrance to the stockyard, and the operator nowhere in sight. We didn't get out as early as we hoped because of the delay, and the store manager did not look impressed when the tale was relayed to him. Story 3. Years ago, I was on the charitable funds committee at my workplace. We collected money from employees via monthly payroll deduction, and at the end of the year, we would split what we collected amongst 5 popular charities, with half the money going to a particular international charity that supports other charities. I will call this charity Unworthy Wankers for this story. Unworthy Wankers were known to have pretty high administrative fees, which never sat right with me. They also demanded we cut them a check early each year prorated to coincide with their fundraiser, rather than wait until the end of the year when we cut the checks for the other charities. One year, a representative from Unworthy Wankers came to see our committee during their yearly fundraising blitz. We thought they would share inspirational stories about their organization's successes and perhaps thank us for the tens of thousands of dollars we collected for them each year. But oh no, that was not the purpose of this visit. They criticized us harshly, telling us we were not doing our part for a company of our size, and insisted we revisit how we distribute our funds. They were rude and demanding, and I left that meeting absolutely furious. So I decided to suggest to our committee that we take their advice and revisit our process on fund distribution. We subsequently changed our process, and instead of distributing the collected money to 5 charities, we started allowing each employee to donate to any registered charity of their choice. It was a lot more work for our committee to administer, but it was worth it. It turns out, very few employees chose Unworthy Wankers for their charity. The majority chose other charities, resulting in Unworthy Wankers losing tens of thousands of dollars, which they never received from us again. Let's just say, the next year when their representative came to see us, I was delighted to tell them that we took their advice and revisited our process, and now we were letting our employees choose exactly where their donations went. Sadly, just a small number chose Unworthy Wankers. It was hard not to smile when I told them this year's donation would be a few $100s, not the $30,000 they were so disappointed with last year. Story 4. My wife and I moved into a 64 townhome community that was 10 years old at the time. The Homeowners Association board was composed of 5 members who were original homeowners when the community started and had been the sole board members since the community's inception. Their sense of entitlement was crazy. They thrived on their quarterly walkthrough of the neighborhood as they would write up every single home for some kind of violation, regardless of how minor the offenses were. Everyone received a violation letter. Our first letter, the first month living there, stated that our garage door paint was starting to peel. It was a 2-centimeter scrape where the panels met. It needed to be repainted. The siding needed to be power washed. There was a patch of green moss behind a bush. And the sliding door on the deck was dirty. There was dirt on the bottom of the door from recent rain, and it needed to be washed. We had 30 days to fix the issues or begin accruing a fee of $25 a day until they were resolved. I asked around, and everyone received these ridiculously petty letters every quarter. No matter what you did to maintain your townhome, you were going to get a letter about something. As this was going on, none of the major items the neighborhood needed to be fixed were addressed. After a decade since construction, the ground had settled unevenly, and many homes had standing water issues where it wouldn't drain after a storm. The rainwater would sit for 5-7 days in people's lawns. More importantly, there had been a legal fight with the town since the community started about our road being dedicated, meaning the town was responsible for snow removal. Our homeowners association dues included paying for our own snow removal, which we shouldn't have to. And we were paying an attorney for 10 years to fight this with no resolution in sight. Fast forward 2 years, and a few of us had enough and decided to band together to replace the board at the next annual meeting. The existing board got wind of this and hit us all with pages worth of issues with our properties, since if you have outstanding issues, you are not in good standing with the community, thus cannot run for a board position or even vote for those running. This petty move brought the community even closer, and we all spent the weekend before the meeting helping each other clean out their homeowners association honey-do lists. We took pictures, documented everything. Then we had the mail certified delivery of each packet with a completed list and photos to the homeowners association board who lived 75 feet away. Come board night, oddly enough, the lawyer was there to give an update that no progress had been made with the township on dedicating our road. He stuck around as we moved to the elections for the next board. We brought our signed petitions to add our names to the ballot. The board says we're not eligible as we all have outstanding issues with our property. We call nonsense with our receipts from the post office that they received our completed lists with documentation. They reply that they haven't reviewed them yet. We tell them that's not our problem and we are in good standing. The lawyer overheard that and states we are eligible to be on the ballot if we can confirm the issues with our homes were resolved prior to the meeting. The homeowners association president glares at the lawyer, but the lawyer just shrugs, saying, "The rules are the rules." With the exception of the 5 existing board members voting for themselves or each other, we are voted in nearly unanimously to replace them. I led the revolution because I was tired of the petty nonsense when there were real problems in the neighborhood. Sadly, the rest of the elected board members vote me as president. I have no idea what I'm doing. But we spent the next few sessions removing all the trivial violations from most of the neighbors. We went through the bylaws to really focus on what's important. What happens next? It turns out that the lawyer was a friend of the previous president and was in no hurry to resolve anything as he was enjoying our excessive bill. I notify him that if it's not resolved in the next 6 months, we'll find new representation. He was actually good at his job when pressed to do it. He won the case, the town appealed and tried to drag it out. He fast-tracked the appeal as it had been going on for 10 years. And we won the appeal too. The town dedicated our road. Then the lawyer pressed that it should have been done years ago. It wasn't him slowing things down but the town. He ends up getting us a settlement from the judge for back pay on us paying for snow removal that the town was responsible for. We ended up using that settlement to have French drains installed across much of the community to clear the standing water issues. With the money left over, we fixed a lot of the neighborhood issues that the homeowners association should have been doing the whole time. Fences and sidewalks in disrepair, replaced dead trees and shrubs, etc. It was great getting all that done without having to hit our capital reserve fund. I remained president until we moved a few years ago. Our family began to outgrow the townhome. Now we live in a new larger development. With a new homeowners association, I was asked to run for a position on it. I replied, "Not a chance. But I will lead a change in leadership if I need to." Edit. As for the original homeowners association president, 50-year-old male, he wasn't actually eligible to be president. He wasn't on the mortgage. The townhome was in his mom's name. No one knew because he held the books. So being the vengeful leader at the next annual meeting, I wait until ex-president shows up with his petition to try and get his position back. I tell him in front of the other 60-plus homeowners that he can't even be at the meeting, let alone vote or be on a ballot, as his name isn't on the property. But his mom is eligible if she wants to. That was embarrassing enough for the entitled fellow. Story 5. This happened when I was 15. A boy in my neighborhood would often call me and try to grab me. He was around my age. I had told him to leave me alone. I had complained to his parents, but to no avail. When I told my parents about it, they just told me to ignore him. One day, when I was walking home from school, he caught up with me. As usual, he made some inappropriate comments about my body, things he would do to me, etc. I walked faster in an attempt to lose him. I just wanted to get home. But he grabbed my arm and lifted up my skirt, exposing my underwear. I lost it. I began punching and kicking him with all my strength and with all the rage that had been building up inside me. I didn't stop until someone pulled me off of him. It was his mother. She screamed at me for hurting her little boy and told me she would be speaking to my parents. I said fine and walked home. I knew it would get ugly that evening, but his blood on my knuckles made me feel a little better. That evening when my parents got home, Karen was already waiting beside our front door. Apparently, she had been messaging my parents all day, telling them about the beating. She berated them again in person. The boys will be boys defense was used. Here's the fun part. My parents actually apologized to her and promised her they would discipline me. When she left, I told them my side of the story, but my dad just repeated what he had said earlier, that I should have ignored him. And, to make matters worse, he told me if I didn't want to draw the attention of boys, I should lengthen my skirts. Never mind the fact that I had pretty much been assaulted. My mom told me to grow up and be more ladylike instead of getting into fights with boys. My two brothers, who are younger than me, were much more sympathetic. My 13-year-old brother said he'd get his friends to gang up on him if he ever came near me. Thankfully, it never came to that. The coward never harassed me again. I guess getting beaten up by a girl can really damage a misogynist's confidence. Edit. I want to thank all of you for your supportive and thoughtful comments. Except that one individual who commented that catcalling was no big deal. And let me just clarify that this happened 23 years ago when I was 15.